everyone, I'm Elaine Chow.
And I'm Trist Curlis.
And welcome to The Musician's Loop.
Loop, like a drum loop?
No, like the kind of thing that a jeweler uses to evaluate gems.
Oh, like a magnifying glass, like what we'll do on this podcast, actively listening to music like a musician.
That's right. And every week, we are choosing a track to dive into together and share our thoughts about what we find intriguing about the song.
Whether it's songwriting, chord progression, instrumentation, recording technology, arrangement, whatever, we're looking at the music we love through the lens, or the loop, of decades in the music industry.
Hey Trist, what do we have this week?
Today we have one of my favorite country singers ever. Well, I think of her as a country singer. I guess at the time these were such big hits. I don't know if people thought of it that way then, but I did. Really her third big song from Patsy Cline.
Oh.
She's Got You.
Okay. Well, anything you want to say about this before we get into it?
You know, just the usual fare from us. We really do appreciate that you're listening. No matter how, where, or why you're listening, we appreciate having you join us and like to encourage you to improve your listening environment if you can. We're all about the actual active listening. Again, no matter what you're doing, we appreciate it. But if you can, put on the better headphones, be by the better speakers, get in the better listening room. Please do that now before you listen. Thanks.
Awesome. We're going to go ahead and leave the links to this song in the show notes. So please pause the podcast, listen to this maybe once, maybe twice, maybe more, and we will be right back. And we are back. I just have to say, this song is the sound of my childhood. It is a soundtrack
really?
of my childhood.
Really?
Yeah.
How so?
We did this bonus episode near the very beginning of the show where we talked about our musical influences.
Yeah.
And for me, a big one was my dad and just the songs that he was completely obsessed with. And this was one of them. So every single road trip, every single time that we were hanging out together, I mean, karaoke, it was everywhere. And so I could sing all of the background tracks because I was in the back of a minivan singing, with the background tracks there. So this was a very familiar song for me. And at the same time, it was a great challenge to sit and really think of it like a musician, because before it was just the soundtrack of my childhood, right? Oh, it's just that song that dad listens to, or that is playing in the car again as we're going on some kind of a road trip down to Los Angeles. And so I think that listening to it this time was a different experience because I was looking at it through a very specific lens, which is how we were listening to it as a musician's loop. But that being said, I would love to hear why you chose this song, because I certainly have a lot of associations with it.
I love that. That is interesting when you have a song like that either in one part of your life, or maybe you had a gig where you just had to play it so much that you really got sick of it, or you just grew to love it, or whatever, where you have something like that where, like you say, your dad played it, it was on the rotation heavy and you heard it so many times, and then way later that's your instant reaction, but then to switch and have to think of it differently or hear things you never heard before. Even when I choose some of my favorites that I choose for this, the fact that then we dissect them and talk about lyrics, or I'll just hear a part I never heard before. I like that about this. Every time I hear this song, it's usually used pretty effectively. There's not a lot of deep meanings. It's exactly face value here, right? It's telling you exactly what's going on. And with all of Patsy Cline's song, she has that sound. It's obvious why she was chosen to record these kinds of songs. You can just hear the pain or anguish in her voice in these songs like Crazy or I Fall to Pieces or any of the other ones that she's known for. It's kind of the same. It's like, oh, here she is again telling us another sad story. Oh, it's just crushing. I really like how on the podcast I like to dig into lots of different things that have a lot of complexity and layers, but occasionally I like to get back to something that's just pretty sparse and basic, but yet really heartfelt, especially in the reaction you have to listening. There's more than just listening to the specific parts that are going on. Like the whole total really can get you.
Let's start out with her voice, because I think that she definitely has a very distinctive voice. And at the same time, like I'm thinking about what is it about her voice and her artistry that really makes this song? And for me, part of it is that she doesn't have a very thin voice. There's actually a lot of
Mm,
foundation in her
right.
voice. And so the way that she is singing is probably a little bit closer to what we would consider belting.
Especially in
Um,
an era when you couldn't do a lot necessarily to make it be any different than it is. Now you can have someone with maybe kind of has a thinner, weaker voice, and you can do so much to
right.
make them sound better. That those mics are capturing what she really has.
And I think that's what I hear from a lot of the 1950s, 1960s songs that I've listened to in the past is that they have tended to elevate some of these thinner voices or these more nasal voices. And Patsy Cline's voice is so clear and bell tone. It has a foundation that really comes with more mature voices, I find, as opposed to some of the younger voices that maybe skew a little bit higher. Is that something that you're hearing in her voice?
Right, right. Even if it's a great voice, more difficult for like a 16-year-old to sing this song. Like they haven't felt enough pain in their life in the right way to actually deliver this in the way that she does. Also, I think in most instances for her tunes and anyone like this, a real key is understanding the singer's voice and knowing where to put those good notes. These things, she sounds like you can hear the anguish and the pain as she's kind of belting through this part of her range. It's like built in that way, like the I've got you, the low, the when she's first talking about
Hmm.
it's lower, it's more in the lower part of her range when she's starting to tell the story. But then as she's kind of exclaiming what she's feeling, it's moving up into a range. And you can bet that if this was written in another key, it may or may not have been. But whenever they got to, oh, it's going to be Patsy Cline that sings this. No, this needs to be in this key. So these notes sound like that in her voice. Very specifically done that way.
Yeah, I was reading that this song was pitched specifically to her. So I think it was not necessarily one that was in a pool that then she selected out of, though
Right.
they would need to change it. So I think it was probably written for her.
Specifically for that sound.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that there was some other things that I wanted to point out about this specific recording, which is where she is on the rhythm and where she maybe chooses to sing a little bit off rhythm for punctuation. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. She does these things where it almost bring my music education up, show it off once again. There's a German style, which is talk, singing, Sprechstimme.
Oh,
How about that? Where there's a melody, but then instead of rhythmically being musically accurate with maybe a note that's written, it's more conversational. So they kind of come off of the voice a little bit. It's when she sings, I've got your memory, or has it got me? It sounds like she's speaking it, even though she is singing it, but it's not really in time. It's not way off, but it's just enough to catch your attention. I think that's also a key for this. It seems more plain, it seems more relatable. You're not just listening to a performance. Someone is telling you this story, and sometimes literally it's closer to telling a story than singing a story.
yeah, I really noticed that as well. I just that little catch in her voice is enough to catch our attention and really give us that sense that she's telling the story.
Yeah.
Now, interesting thing about this is that for some reason in my memory, I had that she was much more rubato at the very end, at that very last line, and
Hmm.
it was a lot more in time than I thought it was.
Right.
So it was an interesting thing for me to think about memory and about how I remembered the song and my experience of it now years later.
Right. Just like we were talking about when you go back. So because it might have slowed just a bit, you remember that. And all these years later, that's the thing that's amplified. Our memories just evolve that way. So I remember that in songs too. Like I was saying, some of these songs that I pick in my mind, oh, I love how it does this. And then I listen and go, okay, well, it does, but not as much as I remember it. Yeah, because it's a key that you remember. So it kind of grows just a little bit over the years.
Well, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the arrangement because it was interesting that you mentioned country because at first I was thinking, well, was it country? I think that it was hard for me to classify it first because I went for country. I was like, okay, this is definitely an older country song. But then I was thinking about some of the pop songs that were released in the 1950s, and there were a lot of things that were very similar, 16 Candles, like the
Hmm.
kinds of things that were released in the 1950s, what we had found on a soundtrack called Senior Prom. And that's in like quotes right there because it was literally called Senior Prom from the 1950s, right? So
Sure.
I'm thinking about these songs, and there were a lot of things that were very reminiscent of that. I'm thinking about the harmony backgrounds that are sung. I'm thinking about the pluck bass, arpeggiation. There was also like a keyboard that I was listening to, and I'm like, man, what is that keyboard? I looked it up, and it turns out most people seem to think it's a Wurlitzer with some
Hmm.
kind of vibrato.
Yep.
And so I was like, oh man, it is a very classic kind of sound. And then I think what threw me off was the piano because it was very what I would call like tinkly in only the upper
That's a
register was
very
being
technical
played.
musical term, folks.
Yeah,
Only the best info here from the very
exactly.
highfalutin educated, the tinkly piano.
The tinkly piano.
Don't bother looking it up.
So thinking about this upper register and really that being the fills in
Yeah.
between where the vocals are. So where an electric guitar would play nowadays. But that was a very specific kind of choice when it came to where the piano was playing, how much and how much it wasn't playing
Hmm.
in this location, some of the choices that were made there. So out of all of these things, I just described this massive arrangement, and it's pretty flat throughout, where
Hmm.
it's just the same elements over and over again. Where do you see this being country?
Oh, it's interesting. I think a lot of times more than what we actually hear, we just in trying to share information with others and relate descriptions, just the fact that it's Patsy Cline and the other songs that she's had. I worked at record stores so many years, so sometimes I just think of people like where they were kept in the store, which is this weird dichotomy I have with being a musical artist and I'm open and music doesn't have labels and it's whatever. But when you work at a store and you need to find something, no, this goes there, right? Like, no, Patsy Cline goes in country. So I can find it in the sea, in country. And yet my artistic, well, I mean, is it a country song or is it a popular song? Those are clashing when I think of those things. I suppose I just said country mostly because of the kind of song that it is, the kind of storytelling, and really her previous output also being similar.
I was taking a look at this, and this is part of the reason I was asking this question, is that with Patsy Cline, it did hit the Billboard Hot Country and Western sides, like peak position #1,
Sure.
but it also hit the Billboard Hot 100 #14.
Yeah.
And so I think it was both of them, but every time it's been recorded ever since, it was underneath country. Like Loretta
Right.
Lynn did a version of this that made it into the hot country songs.
Right.
Other people who are country artists have recorded this. It was funny, after you suggested this song, I was out and about. I don't remember exactly where I was, but I heard it playing and I was like, oh, but it wasn't the Patsy Cline version. It was some cover. And so like, okay, there we go. It's
Yeah, I feel
out.
like it's been covered quite a bit. It's such a good song. That's a good sign, the fact that people want to cover it so much.
Yeah. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the lyrics because we haven't dug into the lyrics. I know that you said that like what you see is what you get, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the imagery here, about what I see here. Did you want to talk about this or do you want me to take this away?
Oh, you in the back of the minivan can tell me all about the lyrics.
That sounds a lot more risque than it really is. In thinking about this, I was looking at the lyrics itself and thinking about, well, there are a couple of elements that she brings up as visuals, right? There's a signed picture that she talks about. There are these shared records that she talks about. These are tangible things. And then there's this class ring. And so I think about the signed picture, which is, all right, maybe in today's parlance, maybe a little bit unusual because people don't really sign their pictures. Shared records, that's definitely something that I think people would understand even today, where you're like, hey, we have these shared belongings, but it's also this shared experience, whether we're listening to music together or whatnot. And then there's this class ring, which I think is very telling of the time, because of the importance of the class ring to
Mm-hmm.
high school and college culture. And I think probably more high school culture in this case, mostly, I guess, because of my understanding of quote unquote senior prom. But if I think about that, to your point, it is like she has all the tangible things, but she doesn't have the man.
Mm-hmm.
And so the song itself is written in a way where she paints this picture of all the things that they have had together and then ends with the single line
Mm-hmm.
of, I've got these things, I've got these objects, but she's got you.
Right. Which is kind of there's not really a chorus, so it's like the last line, like the repeated line chorus. It's almost like a ballad, other than that has like bridges, like the B section. So yeah, it's kind of odd. It doesn't necessarily, there isn't like a regular chorus, but it has that little refrain. The end of each one of those verses is kind of the hook. Serves the same function as what a chorus does. There's a lot of songs like that. When you think about it, it's like, oh wow, I've always thought about that, and never thought about the fact it doesn't really have like a refrain, a chorus. So it's like a one line refrain, I suppose.
Yeah, that was something that I noticed as well. I was like, what? It doesn't have a chorus. It just has these bridges. And I was like, is
Yeah.
the bridge actually a chorus? But then I really thought of it as a bridge.
Mm-hmm.
And we had talked about the bridge as being really the carrier of truth. And this is the one bridge that it repeats twice. And so as I take a look at that, it's, I've got your memory, or has it got me? And there's a sense of like, who is in control of these
Mm-hmm.
memories? Is she under thrall to these memories? And I think that that's something that she is really struggling with. And I really don't know, but I know it won't let me be. So she is caught in the spell of these memories. Now, what really is interesting to me, I think this is where I lean towards the bridge, is that it lands on a 5. And so it really draws into that downbeat of the verse. It doesn't come to a closure in the way that your typical chorus might be, which is why I was like, oh, it's a bridge. It feels like a bridge.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not a bridge, but I think you and I ended up on the same page on this one.
Yeah, it's kind of semantics. It's a B section. There's 2 A's, and then a B, and then an A, and then a B, and then an A. Sometimes people will just call that the B section a bridge. Again, semantics, it's called lots of different things. I love that, the simplicity that everybody can relate to those things. Yeah, it's great.
Well, any last thoughts on this before we move on?
Oh, that's it. It's just really good. Hits me in the feels every time.
Well, it hits me in the feels for lots of different reasons as well. And so thank you for this trip down memory lane.
Yeah, how about that? I picked one you knew.
Exactly. No,
Sweet.
one that I knew very, very well.
Great. Love it.
Okay, with that, let's switch gears and move on to
I've got your mailbag.
That's right, the mailbag.
This is the place where we would love to hear from you. Anything that we've mentioned about this or any other songs, artists, producers, arrangers, records, or you love the way we covered something, or we missed some drastic, very important point, or it has a certain meaning in your life, any of those things, please, please, please write to us and let us know in the mailbag.
That's right. You can reach us via email at themusiciansloop, that's LOUPE @gmail.com, or you can reach out to us via Instagram and Threads at themusiciansloop. So this week's mailbag also comes from Threads, and it is from a user named Goshfather from November of 2025. And he says, looking cringe, learning to promote or talk about your music only lasts for a little while. Never having made a peep to let anyone know about the art you've created with your whole heart and mind while the world passes you by lasts your entire life.
You're right, Goshfather. This is true. True. As artists, a lot of times you feel like you're just doing the thing, and generally, most artists do not love promoting their own stuff, their own material. They don't like spending time trying to get people to come to shows. I don't know why. There's this aversion to it, like you're boasting about it, or I don't know exactly what it is. And not all artists are like that, but boy, I know a lot that I'm like, man, I wish I'd have known about that. You should have made sure you did more to let me know, and I really want to go. And I find I have to push myself too when I have created something, just to, hey, you should listen to this, or hey, you should come to this concert. But You're right. Whatever feeling I have about, oh, I don't want to be out there, that's going to leave right away. It's especially going to leave when there's a lot of people at my show.
And I think that there are a couple of things in there. Like one of them, there's this reticence you were talking about really just putting ourselves forward. It seems a little gauche sometimes. I think we have the sense of, oh man, am I being annoying? Are my friends really going to appreciate it if I push this information out? Is it repetitive? Especially if you're busy. Sometimes it can be a little bit hard to feel like pushing things out is really like not annoying your friends because you're like, oh, there's more to our life than just gigs. So I think that that's one thing that comes up quite frequently, at least for me. The second one, though, might be exhaustion. There is a sense right now where everyone has to have their personal brand and they're constantly marketing to one another. And so, in some ways, in order to be authentic, it seems like you don't want to do that kind of thing. And also, it's exhausting just to remember, like you were saying, to put things out and make sure that people hear about it ahead of time, whether it's like creating the artwork or making sure that it gets scheduled or just remembering to send it out.
Well, that's part of the evolution that we've spoken of many times over these episodes of the podcast. The evolution of artists needing to take on more themselves. So again, it's great that artists don't necessarily need a label or a big company to support and do all these things for them to succeed. So it's great that you can go out in the world and do things on your own. But then that also means you need to have promotion, or you need to do it yourself, or you need to be able to hire someone to promote things or post things. And now there's not just, oh, I'm going to see that one ad on that one TV show that I always watch, or I'm going to hear it on the one radio station I listen to, or I'm going to look in the one newspaper that I look at. It's not that easy anymore. There's thousands of ways that people get information. And so you're trying to cover all the bases. And then the way that some of it has changed. Oh, I know a lot of people check this. Well, the algorithms are as such that people who are even like supposedly on your list of people don't see the information you want to send as much. So you send it 10 different times, and some people are like, wow, why did they post this ad 10 times? And one person's like, oh, hey, look, I don't really see much from this person because it just doesn't hit them. So I've noticed an interesting trend back to email lists. So
That's right.
kind of as email was starting, it was like, ooh, and instead of just sign up to be on our email list, that got really, really big. And then over time with social media, it was like, oh, well, I don't need all of that because all my people just follow here on Facebook or on Twitter. And then those got eaten up by like, well, but not all of your people are necessarily going to get it. You don't know who's going to do it unless you want to pay us. So slowly but surely, I'm seeing a lot of artists getting back to an email list that they can deal with, that they know that their people are getting the information.
That's right. And I think that that comes back to the sense of marketing and about social strategy or marketing strategy. That is a hard thing for artists, especially to grapple with because it is a part of the industry. But as you were saying, it is something that we as artists are increasingly expected to have responsibility over. So you're not just expected to be a good musician, you're also expected now to be a marketing professional, which I think is maybe a little disappointing for a lot of people. Like, all I want to do is to make my music. But especially if you're trying to get your own work out there, sometimes you need to push a little bit harder.
True story.
Well, let's talk about the flip side, because I think you mentioned it briefly as consumers. What kind of encouragement can you give to some of our friends who are trying to market to us or trying to get us to show up to their gigs or their events or buy their music?
Be creative. I think people see a lot of information these days in all the different platforms and the way that we gather information. So the more creative you can be to catch someone's eye, the better. And again, not to be afraid. Well, I posted that one day a month ago. I put one message on Facebook and it has all of the times that my shows are. Again, you have to do more than that. Don't be afraid to do it multiple times. I will say every once in a while, someone who is very aggressive at making sure they cover all the bases. But really, as fast as I think, wow, man, I've seen info about that show so many times, I can barely even get annoyed by that. And I'm almost instantly like, well, yeah, of course. Good for them. Like, great. You got to do what you got to do. I know about it now. So, yeah, use the tools you have at your disposal. Always look for smarter ways to do things and smarter ways to get someone's attention. Differentiate yourself from the other info we get.
I think for me, I would say really think about how do you reach people multiple times, because it's never that first time. Like if it flies across my feed and I'm not in a convenient place to write it down, I'm going to forget about it, or I'm going to make a mental note to myself and then forget about it, because that's just the way my brain works. I think a lot of people need to see things multiple times. And the times that I have actually been close to coming to something really has been, I've seen the reminder multiple times, but I've also seen it far enough ahead of time that I can actually make a plan to go. Because the worst feeling is, oh man, I already have other plans for that evening. What am I going to do? Am I going to say no to something I've already committed to and see this other thing? Do I just have to skip it? And so that's something that I think just as a reminder to everyone, like the day before is not going to be enough, especially for those of us who plan ahead. Definitely give us a heads up. It's one of those things where the bands that I have seen most frequently and the ones that I make time to go see are the ones that, first of all, let me know that they're coming a month and a half ahead of time, so I can actually buy a ticket and make sure that I make plans and make time and put it in my calendar. Absolutely. And then to remind me the closer they get. And so again, even a local gig where a friend of mine was playing, I couldn't make that evening, but he posted about it a couple weeks ahead of time. I was super excited until I found out it was a date that I couldn't make it. And then he posted about it again a week before, 3 days before, 2 days before, day of. I was so excited for him, and I'm so glad that he was able to play it. And I was very aware of that gig because of the way that he promoted it. And I thought that was just so wise. I was not offended at all. I was actually really excited to see that he was able to play, even though I couldn't make it.
Yep.
All right. Well, any last thoughts here of anything that we were just talking about?
I think that's it. It's another good one, Elaine.
Awesome. So with that, we have a big request of all of you. If there is an episode that you have really liked, please do share it with a friend. We are trying to grow the number of people who get to experience our podcast, and you are the people to help us to do it. You already love us. You already love music, and we know that you know people who love music as well. So please do share an episode.
Yeah, whether that's a song that you never had heard before that you really liked and want to share that song with somebody, or maybe we've covered a song that is a favorite of a friend and you can pass that along as well. Spread the word.
Awesome. Don't forget to like the podcast, share the podcast, subscribe to the podcast. All of this helps us and helps other people find us. So thank you so much for your support. We love you all.
Thank you.
See you next week. Oh, that's not the timer.
I was like, oh, I love that. Just do it one of the times.
I've heard it through the speakers of a Cadillac. I've heard it through the speakers of a Dodge. I've heard it through the speakers of how many minivans. I've heard it through like a VW bus. Right. I've heard it through the speakers of like my dad's hi-fi stereo system. I've heard it on Laserdisc. You know, I've heard it on.
Love it.
Yeah. How many different versions of karaoke have I heard this on?